Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Again, my name's Taylor. I'm a Master Tech and Automotive Instructor, and today we are going to go over motor mounts. Okay, so this is the vehicle that we're going to be dealing with. This is a 2004 Volkswagen Passat wagon. It has a 1.8 turbo engine in it and an automatic transmission. And we're going to go over inspection of the motor mounts and transmission mounts, and then I'm going to go over a little bit into the installation of the new motor mounts. Okay, these are the motor mounts for this vehicle in their new form. You have 5 different ones on this vehicle. You have the snub mount, which is put on the front of the oil pan area here. You have your actual motor mounts or engine mounts, and you have a left and a right one. They're going to be on the sides of the engine block. They come off of a bracket, and they bolt onto an extension of the subframe. And then you have your transmission mounts, and these will mount to the subframe and isolate the subframe from the transmission. So the snub mount right here, we're not going to go into the installation of this because I just replaced this mount on this vehicle when I did the timing belt. So you do have to have the vehicle in service position or get kind of crafty with putting this mount on. So we're going to just discuss this mount right here, this one, and these 2 transmission mounts today. Interesting thing about these front mounts are a lot of them are liquid filled, so they will have some type of liquid inside them, some type of oil. So when they go bad, you'll see some wetness around this area, maybe a drip at the bottom of these, and that just means that they're no longer solid. They've got a crack in them somewhere. So these have a rubber cap that's molded onto the top of them, and inside there you'll have some type of liquid in there it's actually used to reduce vibration and everything from that engine. So these have 2 studs on each side and nuts that hold them onto the car, and this just isolates the engine from the subframe here. The transmission mounts in the rear are just solid rubber. There's no liquid or anything in here, so you can't really tell if they're bad outside of just shaking the transmission. The mounts on my car really I don't think are all that bad. The transmission mounts aren't, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace them just because they came with the whole kit that I got here. This kit I got off of eBay for I think it was less than $100. And the important things, especially on the turbo engines on these, are that you have these heat shields here. These are silicone heat shields. They fit on top of these. They need to go on the top of the motor mount, and that shields the motor mount rubber area from any high temperature from the turbo and the exhaust manifold. Not so much important on this side. I am going to keep this on there. If you happen to have a V6, it's important to have both of these on, but it's not going to hurt anything to have it on. And the transmission mounts also have it on there as well to keep the exhaust pipe and catalytic converter from possibly causing any heat damage to that rubber. So pretty simple parts here outside of them being fluid filled. And we normally put these on about every 150,000 miles on these cars. Some of the symptoms I've been getting are sitting at a red light with the air conditioning on, maybe I'll get a little bit of a vibration through the vehicle. I'm not really getting any type of lift or anything or any shake from left to right when I'm doing any power braking on the car like you would on a traditional motor mount breakage. But I'll show you kind of what I'm getting into on the car. I have it up in the air and we're about to go into that real quick. I have the vehicle up on the lift, and you can do this on ramps and use jacks, but fortunately I have access to a full shop, so and it's a little bit easier to show you guys, but I have done these on the ground before. The mounts, see my light here, the mounts, one of them will be right there. You can see it, it's hard to see, right there, and the other one is going to be right here. You see that mount, you see the rubber cover there. So my right side mount, and normally you'll see the right side mounts on these go bad before anything, has sprung a leak. The fluid is coming out of it. See that purplish black color stuff right here? So that's how you can really tell that motor mount is a failed component. On this side, I'm not seeing that right here, but however, I'm going to replace them as a pair just for precautions. Now when we go down here to the transmission area, you see the mount. It's going to be right here. I'm going to kind of zoom out so you can see the subframe runs down here and the mount will run right to it. You have one again on each side, and you can see how close this is to the exhaust system here. So that's why it has that heat shield in there to protect that rubber area from any heat. And so that's the location. You also again have a snub mount, and it's going to be at the front of the oil pan here. It's actually in a little cup bolted to the oil pan, which you'll have to take off to replace the mount. And some people, I've had, even myself, you can put these mounts on without having to put the vehicle into service position. However, on this one, with this type of mount design, this is not a Volkswagen mount. This is a little bit heavier duty mount, but we had to take the vehicle into service position and pull the front bumper off and all that to get that mount in. And I just did that when I did my timing belt, so I'm not going to get into that today. But when these mounts go bad, when you take off from a stop or something, you'll hear maybe a clunk or something up front, a thud, and that's just the engine moving up and down against this mount. And the factory ones are made out of foam rubber material, so the heat and weather get to them and it deteriorates it and it fails. So really common issue to replace. Okay guys, one of the hardest parts about this job is you have one nut over here underneath the turbocharger that holds the mount to the engine bracket. You can't really see it. You can see the top of the motor mount right there, that gray item right there, and a little bit inboard of that there is a 13mm head nut, and unless you take the airbox out, it's really hard to get to. You can't get to it from the bottom unless you have a really weird shaped wrench or something. But normally what I do is, I'll show you what I do. I get this little setup here. I get a flex head 13mm, put a 3-inch extension on it, then I'll put another flexible joint in here, a U-joint or a flex joint in here, and then I'll run my longest extension to my 3/8 drive, and this will come right off. There's some type of Loctite or some type of substance on there that kind of keeps it to where it's a little difficult to thread out by hand, so it pretty much has to come out that way. The next bolt that we're going to remove is on the driver's side, and it is fairly easy to get to. It's right, let's see there, right center screen, and that's it kind of shadows the other side, so if you can't see the other bolt, this is what it looks like, and this is going to be on the driver's side, so we're going to use pretty much the same setup to get this one out. Okay, so the next step to getting to these motor mounts is we're going to have to remove this bracket right here. So we normally have a sway bar. I've already taken it apart here. You have two 13s here, you have two 13s on the other side, and then you have a nut bolt combination right here holding it onto these end links. They're both 16mm, so get you a socket and a ratchet on one side and a wrench on the other side. And I just put these bolts up here so I wouldn't lose them. Always good practice. But so after we get the sway bar out, what we're going to have to do is we're going to take these bolts right here, 13mm, off. This side should actually have two. It holds a wire bracket up here. We need to get that out of the way, so we'll just swing it out of the way. And there's another bolt under here. We'll get those off and get the 13 off on this side. So after I get done, I'll start this back. Okay, so what I've done now is I am supporting the engine oil pan. I'm using a block of wood and a floor jack that goes all the way up. Of course, with the car on the rack, but you can use a regular floor jack if you're on jack stands. Just make sure that you support this with a block of wood. This is an aluminum oil pan, so I have seen times where people will put a jack right through this oil pan. It's fairly brittle. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the weight of the engine off of these two brackets right here. So these are the two brackets that we're going to be working with here. They have a couple of bolts. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3 right here that need to come out. And as long as you've already taken this bolt out, they should just come right out. Some of them do have like a ground on them screwed into the side, some of them don't, so you can just let them hang loose, because all we're trying to do is just get enough clearance out to where we can get this stud out and get this mount out. So the mount is loose right now because we have the weight off of it. So when we take this bracket off, the mount should pretty much just fall out. Just be real careful, because when we take this one bolt out right here behind this is also holding in the subframe. So you may want to support the subframe right here as well with another jack. Normally I don't see it bend down too much, so I'm able to put it back in correctly. But we want to make sure before we put the weight back on this that bolt is back in the front of this subframe. So let me get these bolts out and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have the mount out here, and what you're seeing is the beginnings of these stress cracks you see. It's not cracked all the way through, but you are starting to see, you know, a little bit of dry rot. This is on the driver's side. On these cars, because the turbo is on the passenger side, you'll normally see way more of this because of the heat and the dryness of where this thing lives. But so after we took off that the aluminum bracket that holds this in, this just pretty much fell out. Matter of fact, I had to get one of my students to grab it because I had the impact in my hand. So you have those 18 millimeters that you have to take off. That bracket will drop, and then this will fall out. Just make sure that the rubber side on reinstallation goes up, and some of these will come with this silicone heat shield right here. So that heat shield definitely needs to be put back on, and to protect this from any heat. Normally you see this more on V6s than the inline 4s on the driver's side, but we're going to put it back on anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so we got everything pretty much mated back up. The only thing I want to show you guys is you have multiple holes on this engine bracket here. You want to make sure that you get the hole that it came out of. So you see that mark where the nut used to be? There's a dirt void there. You want to make sure that it goes through that same hole. If not, it's going to shift the engine. They make this mount for a couple of different engines that may use a different hole. We want to make sure we get it in the correct one. After we get that done, you put your 2 short bolts in right here, and you'll put the long bolt in right here that goes to the subframe. And again, please remember to torque all this to manufacturer specifications. Make sure you don't have a rattle or anything like that. And again, I do one side at a time. That is for a couple different reasons. I don't want to leave too much hanging on this subframe with without the 2 big bolts in there. And also, this subframe, when it moves around, it changes your camber and your caster to the car. So I always want to keep it staked down with at least 3 bolts, which I have 2 in the back, 1 in the front. That way my alignment specifications stay the same, and I don't have to do an alignment after this. So always just do one side at a time if you can. Okay, so now we're going to do the other side. Again, this was the tougher side to do when we had that top bolt off. This is where the turbo lives. So again, you just want to take off your 3 bolts, and when you pull this down, everything should pretty much fall out there. Okay, so I have the other side off here, and this one is more worn than the other side. You see it's got that very large crack in there, and it's very common to see these completely separate from the top and the bottom. And you'll see at the bottom, you'll see the oil has leaked out completely and has stained the bottom area here. But one thing I want you also to notice is this heat shield here. This heat shield normally will come with a new mount, but it goes, those holes will kind of line up there. And so you want to make sure that that's on there before you put it on, especially on the turbo side, because that's where all the heat and all the dryness and everything is on that side. So again, we're just going to put this this new mount back in there, and then we'll get to the transmission mounts. Okay, now we're going to move on to the transmission mounts. Now the transmission mounts, if you follow the subframe, you're going to go back here. This is the passenger side transmission mount. This is the driver's side. And one little difficult thing about these is this bolt that goes through here. It's really hard to access from the top. So what I normally do is I take the transmission and I'll put it in a bind. So I'll just put a little pressure on this transmission pan, not too much. You want to use a piece of wood in between, and that's going to get this in a bind. It's going to hold the top of that bolt, and I'll just hit them with the impact and see if they'll come off. But this will come off. This little ring right here will also come off as well, and then we can take these other bolts off right here, and we should be able to lift the transmission up a little bit and just slide these out and replace them. So the left side and the right side are pretty much the same. You do them the same way. You just have a little bit less clearance on the passenger side here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these bolts out and we'll see what's up. Okay, y'all, I forgot to tell you when we were taking these off right here. This is the back of the motor mount, so towards the front of the car here. You have a bolt that goes through this motor mount that holds it to the transmission bracket here. And if you just try to take this bolt off right here, this inside is going to spin. It's just going to spin around. So on the other side, it's really easy to get to. On this side, it's a little bit more difficult because you have this heat shield. So what you're going to want to do is you can just take your hand and just peel this up. It'll stick in any direction that you put it in. It's almost like the same consistency as those disposable cooking pans. We just push that up, and then you want to come through the other side here, almost near the CV axle, with your wrench, and you want to hold. There's a nut right here. Excuse me, this is at the top of the bolt. You want to hold that with your wrench while you're taking off this right here, and it'll come right out. So just a little pro tip there. All right, so we have these loose. This should move around. This other side, matter of fact, you can pull it all the way out, and you can kind of see how these bolts stick through there. Now we're going to need a little bit of clearance because we can't get these out. The transmission's going to be in the way here. So what we're going to do is going to take either a floor jack or some other jack, and we're going to just jack this transmission up to give us a little bit more clearance. And then these will just come right out. You may have to use a pry bar to kind of slide them in or out, or pull this bolt. This bolt will have a washer on it too. I just pulled it out. And then you just kind of manipulate these out. And they'll come right out. Again, they have the heat shields on them. And when we're putting the mounts back in, we just want to make sure they're centered up. Kind of leave everything loose before you let the weight off the transmission. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop these mounts out, put the new ones in. I'll show you how to bolt them back up. Okay, so we have the new mounts positioned. They're loose. And what we're going to do first is we're going to put the small bolts in to get everything centered up. I'm going to have my helper here go ahead and do that. We're going to do that on both sides. And what we've done is we just slid the bigger bolts, the 16mm head bolts, through the top. We still have the pressure lifting up the transmission here. So right now we're just screwing these in by hand. Throw them in with the impact real quick, and we'll drop the transmission, and then you'll see those bolts will protrude through here. We'll tighten everything up, and then we'll be done. Okay, I've got the old transmission mounts out right here, and you can see that there's a huge crack right here. They're all dry rotted out, so they're definitely worn. It was definitely time to change them. I'm glad I went ahead and got them as well. So all this, your transmission mounts and your engine mounts, and even the snub mount that goes in the front, all that's going to cause vibration and instability of the powertrain, and all that's going to cause, you know, some extra noise, vibration, or harshness on the inside when you're driving the vehicle. So hopefully this has got rid of my vibration. Okay, so just finished up the install of the motor mounts, put everything back together, got everything squared away. Went and took it on a quick test drive, and wow, what a difference. As far as the vibration, everything that I got at stops, everything is gone. The car seemed to feel like it was pretty much brand new. no big vibrations or anything when you're driving. So really happy with the install, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And again, my name is Taylor Bryant. I'm a master technician and automotive instructor, and I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, please list them in the comments, and if you have any suggestions on what else I should do, just let me know. I'm willing to teach y'all anything. So hope to see you soon, and take care.